Hello everybody, today we're going to explore the unpublished history of a well-known Windows developer that claims he wrote the Task Manager. Yes, that story is about the 55-year-old David William Plummer, known online as a wise bearded man behind Plenty of Things Windows. Recently I found out a piece of history he prefers not to share with his followers, and I can't quite grasp on why he keeps the silence. Dave Plummer ran a company that was sued by Washington State in 2006. The company was called SoftwareOnline.com Incorporated. It developed and sold software products while simultaneously doing all the marketing work. During its lifetime, the company proved to be fairly successful, spanning over 1 million customers. The business practices of SoftwareOnline.com, however, sparked controversy and caused legal trouble for Dave, and for a good reason. Now, before we begin, it's obvious this happened about 20 years ago now. Dave Plummer may very well be a changed man, but there is still something that rubs me the wrong way with the guy. It's ultimately up to you to judge him. All the sources are in the description below. I don't want anyone to flame David for his past actions, but the following information you should absolutely consider, as in my opinion it severely recontextualizes his work, including the book he's selling called The Secrets of the Autistic Millionaire, which I quote in this video a lot. The biggest problem I have with Dave is that he doesn't want to shine extra light on Software Online. His LinkedIn doesn't mention that company, even though he was the chief technology officer of it. He never openly spoke about it anywhere. He blocked me on Twitter for bringing it up, but then immediately unblocked. Then he sent a direct message, which I think I'm allowed to read in public because he just keeps me on red now. Hello, I'm not sure why you decided to start this dialogue in public and in such an inflammatory manner over a 20-year-old investigation that was resolved to the state's content. We were also fully audited by the state for compliance before the company's sale. But either way, I don't understand what you hope to achieve. If you assume my channel is twice the size and hence twice the revenue, then you know what I earn. And most profits go to the University of Washington Autism Center. I just don't see a benefit in destroying the little hobby I've built for myself in retirement. I thank you in advance for any grace you're willing to extend, and if you have questions, please ask. Dave. So I did ask him a bunch of questions, but he kept me on red. So he assumes if I speak about SoftwareOnline.com in public, it's going to destroy his online reputation, which I don't think is true. We all make mistakes, and it's all a matter of owning up to them and coming clean before the audience. Since he keeps me on red, I just assume he wants to wait out the storm again. Although I don't really believe he's going to lose from openly speaking about his villain arc in the past. Anyway, he dropped out of Microsoft specifically to run this company, as being a Microsoft developer was starting to become too much of a burden. And it implies Software Online was generating more revenue. Makes sense. He also ran a company that had no legal trouble called Zeriton. It was acquired by Support.com in December 2009. And currently he's the CEO of Plummer Software LLC since January 2018. So my concern here, if Dave doesn't want to speak about Software Online publicly, he must be hiding something. Because naturally, if the investigation accelerates, and maybe some private investigator online takes on this, he might get in legal trouble again. How do I know he isn't doing shady stuff with software if he did before and actively tries to hide it? That's not a good look for him, and he knows that, yet he keeps ignoring that. Let's take a look at the legal documents now. It was a civil case which he settled into a court order. So here's the complaint from the state of Washington against SoftwareOnline.com Incorporated and David William Plummer, the Chief Technology Officer, doesn't really matter, of SoftwareOnline.com Incorporated. And we want to check out Article 5 and 6 of this document because they are the meat of the complaint, and the rest seems to be legalese. So Article 5 is called Nature or Trade of Commerce. And here we go. Since at least 2005, Software Online and David William Plummer, together defendants, have marketed, advertised, and sold various software products to the public over the internet and through commercial electronic mail solicitations, email in quotation marks, including a product called Internet Shield, an internet security and privacy program that defendants represent will detect a computer's vulnerabilities to harmful exposed websites. and will provide the computer user protection against security and privacy attacks. And a product called Registry Cleaner. Software that defendants represent will clean a computer's registry in order to protect the computer from crashes, slow performance, and other problems. Defendants advertise and promote their products by first offering the user a free scan of the user's computer and then offering to fix a small number of the problems identified by the scan. Defendants then strongly recommend to the user that the user purchase the full program in order to be protected from the remaining problems on the user's computer. Defendants are in competition with others in the state of Washington engaged in similar business. First of all, the case revolves around two pieces of software called Internet Shield and Registry Cleaner. The plaintiff clearly implies unfair business practices here, which you can't disagree with. The keyword here is strongly recommend, which we're going to translate from legal language to English shortly. Let's finish the complaint first. So the Article 6 brings up the violations of the Consumer Protection Act and the Section A, first cause of action, misrepresenting the extent to which software is necessary for security and privacy reasons. In promoting their software products, Registry Cleaner and Internet Shield, defendants offer a free scan of the user's computer, then fix a small number of the problems identified by the scan. If the user opts not to have the alleged problems fixed, or if the user has the alleged problems fixed but then declines to purchase the product, defendant's software generates multiple advertisements or dialog boxes and or launches new browser windows in order to continue to induce the user to purchase the full program. The advertisements and dialog boxes repeatedly warn the user of the threat or risk remaining on the user's computer, no matter what the scan results of the user's computer reveal, and urge the user to purchase the full program. In some instances, if the user does not purchase the full program of the product, defendant's advertisements and scan interface, both warning the user of the remaining problems on the computer, automatically appear on the user's screen each time the user restarts the computer, until the user uninstalls the free scan software or purchases the product. The totality of the user experience after running defendant's Registry Cleaner and Internet Shield free scan, from the scan results to the subsequent series of warning type advertisements, creates the misleading impression that the user's computer is at serious risk of harm. Defendant's Internet Shield free scan in particular finds every computer at risk for security and privacy violations as long as the computer does not have the same 2,000 plus websites that defendants have identified as harmful entered into the computer's restricted zone. Furthermore, the scan shows a user's computer as vulnerable to over 2,000 dangerous websites, even when all of those exact sites are blocked by means of the user's host file. In this way, the scan function is unreliable in assessing the computer's vulnerability and misleads the user into believing that the user's computer is at risk when it is not. The misrepresentation of the risk of harm to the user's computer to induce the user to purchase a product constitutes unfair and deceptive acts or practices in trade or commerce, and unfair methods of competition in violation of the Consumer Protection Act. So as you can see, so far all of this is on point. Let's continue. Section B, second cause of action, misrepresenting functions on advertisements. Defendants advertise Registry Cleaner and Internet Shield in various ways, including but not limited to through pop-ups, pop-unders, dialog boxes, and chat dialog boxes, some of which are generated by the free scan software. Defendants misrepresent through standard buttons on its advertisements and program interfaces that if a user clicks on those buttons, the advertisements will close or that processes in progress will cease. In fact, in many instances, the buttons on defendants' advertisements and interfaces do the opposite of what the button should do or fail to do what the button should do. For example, if a user clicks on X to close an advertisement, rather than the advertisement closing, another advertisement pops up over the original advertisement. If a user clicks on close to close an interface, rather than the interface closing, an advertisement pops up. Defendants' misrepresentation of buttons that do not perform their normally expected functions misleads consumers and forces users to continue to view defendants' advertisements when the user is trying to close out of the advertisement. Section C, third cause of action, misrepresenting the functionality of uninstall option. Defendants offer an uninstall option for its free scan software. However, the uninstall option does not reliably uninstall the software. Furthermore, when the user is informed that the software has been uninstalled, some of defendant's software files in fact remain on the user's computer without the user's knowledge or consent. In fact, I believe that's a very weak point from the plaintiff. You could make that argument for any software whatsoever, even back then. I think a valid angle to take instead would be the defendant coerces or bribes the user to continue using the software, even when the user made up their mind to uninstall the software in question. Just take a look at this. Ugh, that's shameless. Please wait! You're about to uninstall Registry Cleaner. We'd hate to see you go if your computer still has any registry errors. And to that end, we'd like to offer you the following. A $5 instant coupon for upgrading to the full version of Registry Cleaner. Please remember that your upgrade to the full version of Registry Cleaner is protected by a money-back 30-day absolute satisfaction guarantee, so your upgrade is risk-free. Would you like your $5 coupon now? And if you click yes, it redirects you to the website with the coupon. In Section D, fourth cause of action, misleading negative option billing. On the checkout page for its software products, defendants offer for sale numerous additional services and products, including extended download plans, download updates, and other software products. Additional products and services have boxes next to them to be checked by the consumer if the consumer wants to purchase the product or service. However, defendants check by default the non-refundable services. Defendants also check by default a service that has to be affirmatively cancelled by the consumer, or else the consumer's credit card is authorized to be charged at the end of 1 year. In order for the consumer not to be charged for the purchase of the additional non-refundable products and services, or not to have a credit card subject to being billed automatically after the free period has expired, the consumer has to manually uncheck all of the boxes. In numerous instances, consumers receive and are billed for products and services that they did not affirmatively request. So, Section D is the only claim Dave has responded to, but not to me. Here's what he said. We broke the law in Washington state on negative affirmation billing practices. Here's what happened. No, there are 3 more claims in the complaint aside from that, which I just read to you. But let's continue. When you bought the program, you had the option of just typing in your reg key or downloading the full version, or getting a CD in the mail. The CD option was about $6, including shipping, I think, so it wasn't a profit center either way, really. By the time you buy a blank CD, have it duplicated, put it in a mailer with instructions and send it, it's thin margins. But it was pre-2000, and a lot of people were just more comfortable owning the physical media. We found that if we made download only the default option at checkout, we got a lot of calls from people who never got a CD and were mad about it, and they usually resulted in us issuing a refund. You could tell them that they were opted for download only, but they wouldn't remember it that way, and they were tired of waiting, would want to cancel the order, and it was a negative experience all around. But if we defaulted to CD, that didn't happen, so people seemed happier with the default being the CD version. The few people that called about getting a CD by mistake, we just credited if it happened. The problem is that the CD version cost, as I said, $6 more than the download only version. And here in the Washington state, that's considered negative affirmation billing. It's not uncommon on the web, but we served as a test case for it. We agreed not to do so any longer, paid a fine for having done so, and most of it was suspended after an annual audit confirming we were golden. That's not false, but it's not entirely true either. I would say that statement is more false than it is true. I found this checkout page on Wayback Machine dating back to March 9th of 2006. There are 2 auto-ticked checkboxes with options you will get billed for. So backup disk sent to your home, select this option, we will send the software on disks to your home for only $10 shipping and handling charge, non-refundable, as the complaint claims, which is correct. We also offer an optional extended download service whereby you can re-download your purchase from our website days, weeks, or even years later. This is a one-time setup fee and is non-refundable. So it's recommended as well. It's non-refundable and it's auto-ticked. So clearly, this requires negative affirmation from the user and it bills the user. So it confirms fully the statement within the complaint. And Dave again kind of avoided that question. He told us about what happened before the 2000, but this is clearly March 9th, 2006. So it happened 6 years later. And this is very likely what he got sued for. And let's try refreshing that, because many people might not believe me. And to not spark a controversy, I'm gonna show you that it is in fact auto-ticked. I'm not gonna edit this out, not at all. And you can check it yourself. So store.sharewareonline.com main checkout.aspx. Let's go ahead and hop on to January 22nd, 2006, for example. And there you go. There are two auto-ticked checkboxes. And then it, for some reason, redirects me. So here's the URL. Check it for yourself if you don't trust me. There. In my books, the software I showed you is a clear scam. Legally speaking, it's not, but does it really not trigger any red flags in your mind? Registry Cleaner detects 42 problems on Windows XP right out of the box. The clean install has 42 problems, and it's clearly over 20 the software fixes for free. You could argue, well, yeah, Windows Registry is a hot mess, what did you expect? I agree with you, but the scare dialog isn't optimized for when there are less than 20 problems. You see how this looks. The software is very clearly targeted to induce the user into purchasing it instead of fixing the problem. You can't say that legally, but it's a scam. It's obvious enough to deduce the nature of the software by just using it for a bit. You're not being honest to yourself if you don't think it's created to scam people. I mean, you're free to think all you want, but in my opinion, it's a clear scam. The Internet Shield adds an RFC private IP address to your restricted zone, and it only blocks these cherry-picked websites under Internet Explorer. If you use a different browser, this doesn't apply to them. It doesn't count the host file, even though host doesn't support wildcards. Come on now, the software barely does what it claims to do. It could have been great. Was it not created in bad faith, that is? These aren't the only programs Software Online has published. There are a couple more I wished were included in a case against Dave. For example, CPU Rocket. It was marketed as freeware. But when you install it, it ships with an adware. It installs you a module that serves ads. And then, once you install it, it's not a full version of software at all, and you're given an option to pay extra for an upgrade to MemTurbo, which quite obviously isn't going to remove the adware module. And if you uninstall CPU Rocket, it simply doesn't uninstall it, and the adware remains, and it starts on boot. That's despicable, and unfortunately the plaintiff didn't include it in the case against Dave Plummer. I believe the inclusion would make it stronger. CPU Rocket specifically was written by him, because it's a stripped down version of MemTurbo, and MemTurbo is his creation. He admitted to it on Twitter. It's not an exhaustive list of questionable software the company has published. There's way more stuff publicly available on Wayback Machine, including all the deceiving ads the company has produced. There are several domains owned by Dave, namely softwareonline.com, sharewareonline.com, and certifiedsafedownloads.com. Dude, I can't with that name, honestly. Certified Safe Downloads, that's kind of crazy. And there are a bunch of subdomains like adserver.sharewareonline.com, store.sharewareonline.com, which included negative affirmation billing, and plummer.sharewareonline.com, which may prove that Dave did in fact own the domain sharewareonline.com. Keep in mind, this all happened 18 years ago. The court case was published on April of 2006. He was 37 years old at the time. He had a STEM background, And he's also
retired software engineer from Microsoft, going back to the MS-DOS and Windows 95 days.
he was well aware of what he was doing was wrong. Now, the case was settled to the state's content. He's right in my DMs. The company was eventually sold. And unfortunately, it seems like Dave remained an overwhelming net gain from Software Online. The court order shows that he had to pay out $190,000, with additional $250,000 on hold if he violated the terms of the decree, and he also agreed to pay out restitution, which is described in section 4.4. Basically, he had to refund the customers who would file a complaint. Let's see the exact terms below. So it is section 4.4. Pursuant to some law, defendant at his own expense hereby agrees to provide consumer refund or adjustments, to the extent it has not already done so, to those consumers who have filed complaints or who file complaints or requests for refunds with defendant or with the Attorney General's Office, the Better Business Bureau, or Federal Trade Commission within 120 days following entry of this decree. 6 months after the entry of this decree, defendant will deliver a written report to plaintiff's counsel detailing the claims or requests it has received, including the identity of each claimant, the amount of refund requested and the reason for the request, the amount refunded, and the total amount of all refunds and adjustments. I am willing to bet there weren't many people who filed complaints, although I may be wrong. I didn't see that document, and it doesn't seem to be out online. Anyway, let's check out the terms of the decree. There are plenty. So, defendants and all successors, assigns, transferees, officers, agents, servants, employees, and representatives of defendants are hereby enjoined and permanently restrained in the state of Washington from directly or indirectly engaging in any of the following conduct. Keep in mind, that's only in the state of Washington. So, for example, if he's in the state of Texas, he's allowed to do all this. Misrepresenting directly or by implication urgency, exclusivity, or need for products or services in the context of any advertising or marketing of services or products, including but not limited to using any language, symbols, or other visual or verbal messages that misrepresent to the user that the user's computer is at risk, that necessitates purchasing the product, or using methods such as repeated pop-ups that warn or remind the user of problems detected on the computer by a free scan. That's oddly specific, and it's kind of like legal language. It just kind of steers me off. Utilizing buttons on any form of advertisement or marketing of any product that do not function as a user would expect them to function based on the commonly understood and accepted purpose of the button, including but not limited to cancel buttons that when clicked upon redirect the user to a website by opening a new browser window, X buttons that fail to close the advertisement dialog box or browser window or open another advertisement, dialog box or any other form of pop-up, and no buttons that redirect the user to defendants or any other website. Advertising, marketing, or promoting Internet Shield by means of a scan of the user's computers. Why exactly is it tied to Internet Shield? Why is it not any fake software? That's kind of weird. Installing on a user's computer by means of a free scan, a free trial version, or any other form of software download, software that causes multiple advertisements, dialog boxes, or any form of pop-up or pop-under to appear on the user's computer after the user... Okay, we get it. Failing to use commercially reasonable efforts consistent with industry standards and technology to provide a functional and easily accessible uninstall option for any software defendants market, promote, advertise, or sell, including but not limited to trial versions. I swear. Failing to use commercially reasonable efforts consistent with industry standards and technology to remove entirely all software files from the user's computer in uninstall process, including but not limited to executables and icons. I believe that was a thing with CPU Rocket. Interfering with the user's efforts to uninstall software that defendants markets, advertises, and or sell by generating more advertisements on the user's computer or by any other means before the my guy, they can't even spell here. Uninstallation is complete. Failing to obtain a consumer's explicit positive assent to purchase a product or service prior to billing for the product or service. Well, that's regarding the negative affirmation billing. misrepresenting the risks that any products or services are designed to address or the benefits or cost of any products or services, and misrepresenting the utility, substance, or effect of any scan of the consumer's computer. Well, that's basically what his software did, and he's no longer allowed to create or distribute any of that software, at least in the state of Washington, as it states here. But yeah, here's the payment plan right here, the pay schedule. So all he did was pay $119,000, and that was it. I am sure he made more than that, way more than that. He had several million customers, as stated in his book. And even though he agreed to pay out restitution in full, I don't think many consumers filed a refund request with softwareonline.com, because Software Online was running for a long time and many consumers just maybe forgot about this at that point in time. So Dave Plummer went out of this pretty much unscathed. I'm fairly certain. Now again, 20 years ago, right? Right? This still leaves a bitter aftertaste for me personally, and actually mostly because Dave doesn't want to respond to this. And he's still kind of lying about this, kind of being slimy about this, leading me to believe he's hiding something. Another silly response I've seen from commenters is that it used to be common practice back in the day. This does not excuse him. This is just a non-argument. Say so many people are running a crypto scam right now. Does that excuse them in any way? No, it doesn't, so why are you saying this? Another great one, the case was settled. Well, the case was indeed settled, thanks for telling me, but there is clearly no remorse. You can plead guilty to anything, that doesn't mean you actually admit to being guilty. Sometimes it's just less headache, and a bargain. For example, if you plead guilty, you get a fine, otherwise you go to prison, even though you're not guilty. What are you choosing? That's what I'm talking about. Finally, Dave has been factually wrong. Dave has been salty about stuff. Dave has spoken very incompetent things. That happens to us all. But more importantly, he's currently selling you a book that's factually wrong. There is a mention of softwareonline.com, but he never speaks honestly about it in his book, let alone call it by its name. He paints himself as the victim of the court system, while I believe I showed you enough evidence to conclude the case against him is pretty solid, and the punishment is rather tame. I can't say anything about the rest of the book, but that Software Online part is really dishonest. Makes you wonder, did he downplay anything else from his story? I wouldn't make this video had Dave answered publicly, and honestly. I told him this on multiple occasions. He doesn't want to be honest, so this video isn't really an expose, so to speak. I don't want to count it as one personally. I don't see canceling Dave, but his business did have at least 1 million victims. Some dudes on Twitter told me I'm bad-mouthing him for no apparent reason. I wanna say, you'd be pretty pissed if you fell victim to Software Online being a child or part of some other vulnerable population. You would hold the vendetta, especially when the person behind it doesn't feel any remorse and constantly tries to whitewash himself. It seems like he's gonna keep ignoring this anyway, so I wanted big YouTubers to take on this. But they're probably not interested in this. Maybe CoffeeZilla would start an investigation or something. I don't know. I just wanted him to be upfront, because this cannot continue. You cannot just say you're a retired Windows developer at Microsoft, Dave. The moment you left Microsoft to run this company, you lost your credibility. Even though it happened so long ago, you owe your following an explanation. That's it from me. Dave, I know you're watching this, and you should respond appropriately. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care.